and I will share my screen and we will kick off. Nearly there. Okay, so I'm hoping, Gareth, you can just see my slide with no other notes or anything.
No, that's fine, Sue.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
perfect.
So as I've said, we will be recording this session and it will be put on, it's actually going to be on the Seal Research Trust YouTube channel because the Seal Alliance doesn't have one yet. And if you go for the QR code, I will show you that later, then you can go straight to that channel to find it, to share it with people. So if you haven't had any contact with the Seal Alliance before, it was established in 2018, and these are the current executive groups that span England and Wales. We haven't actually got any members on the executive from Scotland. That's not deliberate. We did used to have some, but it's a time commitment and a capacity. So if you know any groups in Scotland who you think would be good to join, then please do get in touch. And then in 2023, we set up, and Gareth chairs this, the Partners Group, which, as you can see, has lots of members in it to help spread the word about what seals need from us, what issues they face, etc. So thanks very much to all the partners for supporting us as well. That's fantastic. So we've got all these topics and speakers to cover tonight. The speakers are fabulous, the topics are great, and hopefully you'll find the projects inspiring as well. I've already asked, if you didn't hear me originally, if you've just joined, then please put in the chat what your name is, where you are, and anything about your interest to do with seals. You can also please add questions as they arise so that the speakers can respond while other speakers are talking. And please keep yourself on mute. As I've said, camera optional, but it's nice for the speakers to be able to see you. We're going to start with Maite Poves, but before I do that, I just want to go back to this photo because I've skipped over a bit I wanted to share. The people who are going to speak tonight have a really good understanding about seals. They're heavily invested in them and they spend a lot of time looking at them. So we will be having a bit of a deep dive into seals tonight. And to just give you an illustration, this is just a standard photo that's been taken on one of my surveys. But if you look really carefully at it, you can see that the seal has marks across its nose. So and a bit of an open wound. So from past experience, I'm suspecting that that seal has been caught in a fishhook at some point, possibly more than one, and the fishhook has ripped out. So you might not have noticed that. The other deep dive bit is the fact that there's a juvenile gull looking at the seal who is now responding. Why is the seal looking and responding to the gull? It's because the gull has been pecking at the seal's rear flippers. So if you look at the seal's rear flippers, you will see there's blood there. And actually, if you look on the rock by the beak of the bird, you will see that's where the flippers were when they were pecked. And the seal has just done a bit of a U-turn in response to being pecked by the herring gull. So that's the kind of deep dive stuff that I'm hoping we will be able to do tonight. Okay, Maite, over to you.
Hello, my name is Maite. I run the Pentime catalog for the Seal Group Research Trust. And this is a shortened version of my long-form seminar on the same topic. So it's what seal vocal learning can teach us about the evolution of human speech. Next slide, please. I forget that I don't have the slides myself. So vocal learning is the process through which an organism builds its vocal repertoire. It is not limited only to verbal learning. It is any kind of sound communication that an animal does. In humans, it is thought that this is what we had before we developed speech. And an interesting note is that this is not something that we see in our closest relatives, chimpanzees. So when we look at the evolution of human speech, we don't have like a very close thing that we can look at, a close organism that we can look at as a framework. So we have songbirds like parrots, but the problem with those is that they are birds and they're not even mammals, so they're not particularly close to us. But seals are a very good model, not just because they are mammals, but also because they are one of the few animals that has such refined control over its ability to make sound. Next slide, please. So seals can do this special thing called vocal production learning, or VPL, which is basically when they're able to learn new sounds that are not innate to them as an organism. So this is something that very few animals can do because it's not beneficial for most animals from a communication standpoint. So we as humans can do it. Bats can do it, elephants can do it, songbirds can do it. It's why you can sometimes find videos of parrots that are able to mimic the sound of like a screenshot being taken. But seals are also able to learn these new sounds. And because, again, primates can't do this, they are an interesting framework or rather model to look at because, again, they have the physicality of a mammal, the vocal apparatus of a mammal, and also the ability to make noise that, again, birds and humans have. Next slide, please. So seals have the ability to manipulate something called a formant. So in human speech, there is a component, I suppose. It is part of the frequency of a sound that allows us as humans to differentiate it from other sounds. So the difference between an R sound and an air sound. So this is crucial to us humans. It's second nature to us. It's how we learn language. It's how we differentiate different words from each other in language. But other animals, again, they do not speak language, so they do not need this. So the few animals that can do it and that can manipulate this aspect are very important and interesting to look at. So seals can do this. They have the ability to hear the difference between different sounds on a formant level, and then they are able to understand that difference and replicate it with their own voices. So recently we found that gray seals can do this, and there's a paper from St. Andrews University that shows them doing it. And the reason that seals probably can do this is that it is advantageous to them to have a unique call. Because when they're a pup, they're on a crowded beach, and their mom comes back from the ocean, and to find her pup on this crowded beach, it helps if she can hear it. So if the pup is able to hear what the other pups are doing and make a sound that is different to what they're doing, it is more likely to be found by its mom, therefore more likely to survive. So it's thought that that's maybe why they developed the ability to control this. So next slide, please. So we're going to hear a seal talk about formants or do its formants.
Sorry, mate, I was a bit slow.
It's okay. Next slide, please.
Did that play all the way through, Mater?
It did for me.
Lovely, okay.
So there's other situations and other cases of seals being able to manipulate formants. So there was a seal back in the 70s called Hoover, and he was raised by humans for the first 3 or so months of his life. And then he was sent to an aquarium because his appetite for fish was bankrupting the humans that kept him. And in the aquarium, he was pretty normal until he reached sexual maturity and then began to vocalize. And he was vocalizing the way that harbor seals usually vocalize, like towards females. But the sounds he was making were mimicking human speech, and he had enough control over his ability to make these sounds that he sounded like a human person talking. And an interesting thing to note before we listen to Hoover is that it is an interesting thing that seals do and also that humans do, where we have our learning periods for vocal learning at an early age. So a lot of animals that have this sort of more expanded ability to communicate with noise, they tend to learn a lot of it when they are juveniles, and it is usually harder for them to learn it as adults. So most of the research, so for example, the gray seal you just saw and Hoover, has been done only on juvenile animals. So, but yeah, let's hear Hoover. So next slide, please. So then there's an interesting component where we look at the seal brain and look at how it has evolved for speech, because it is, again, more of a physical proof of how these animals are evolved for it, or well, not speech, vocal learning. So an interesting thing with seals is that they have a very well-developed temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is like the one at the bottom of the brain. And the main sort of takeaway from this, unfortunately, because the brain is a bit of a complicated organ, is that because other animals also have well-developed temporal lobes and they don't have a big role in speech, it is thought that, okay, maybe the temporal lobe isn't the only thing involved in speech. maybe it has a component that does it, but for example, for humans, maybe in our evolution, it was not one of the most crucial parts. That is what we get from seeing seals and other animals with theirs. But it is still worth noting that, again, it's linked to intelligence and speech and the ability to store memories. So they are using it for something, just probably not exclusively speech. Seals also have an enormous cerebellum. As you can see in the second picture, it's like the lump underneath the main lump of the brain. Proportionally, it is huge. The human cerebellum, in comparison to the brain, is a lot smaller. And we think that maybe their cerebellum is so big and complex because they use it for understanding each other. But because we know so little about seal to seal communication, all we can really say is, okay, there's definitely a lot happening there, but we do not know what it is just yet. Also, worth noting, the cerebellum is involved in cognition and in motor processes, so it's probably got a role in VPL because it allows you to, again, understand the sound and then replicate it physically. And lastly, they have a structure called a neocortex in their brain. We also have it, and theirs is big. And when evolution dedicates resources to making something big and to making it essentially more developed, it means that it is useful or that it is helping that animal survive, because it doesn't, resources that are wasted in evolution result in dead animals. So for the neocortex in seals, it is big, and again, it has a role in species that have to communicate with each other to survive. So again, more evidence for the fact that seals communicate in ways that are more complex than we currently know about. So next slide, please. And there is a gene in the neocortex called FOXP2, which is also interesting. So we have it, and for us, it helps us with vocal learning and spoken language and motor learning. But we also see it in chimpanzees, but chimpanzees cannot do the same vocal learning stuff we can. So the reason maybe why chimpanzees can't is that FOXP2 has a different structure in chimpanzees than it does in humans. And when the structure of something changes in the body like that, the function changes. So far with seals, we only know that some species have this gene, but we do not know enough about it to say what it's doing. But again, another sort of point in favor of these guys are doing things with communication that's worth looking at. So next slide, please. And lastly, seals are very much built for communicating in a way that makes them comparable to humans. So they have, even just among pinnipeds, the angle between their airstream going through their trachea and their vocal folds is similar to ours. They have a very strong control of their breathing and of their larynx. So again, they can modulate these formants, and putting all these things together makes them similar to us in our ability to make sound. And that is why they are a good model for looking at human speech and also just seal speech in general. Next slide, please. So future research, because there's not very much on it, it would be nice to see if these animals can learn outside of their juvenile period. It can be interesting to see if they can learn sounds taught to them by other seals rather than by humans. And it's also interesting to see more seal brains, because frankly, we only have the one paper so far. So next slide, please. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant, Maite, and 10 minutes on the dot. Gosh, that's so inspirational. Thank you so much. I suspect, Maite, there will be a lot of questions. There'll be a lot of bamboozled people as well, because I remember being bamboozled when I first heard it. But, you know, there is an awful lot to learn, and Maite does a full version of this talk. And if you're interested, I suggest you jot the date down. You can email, like the same email that you got to get the link for this one. But the talk will be on the 27th of November at 7 o'clock. And that's, you know, I asked Maite to do a 10-minute short version of this, and she's done that fantastically. So well done. Thank you so much, Maite. Brilliant. Questions in the chat, please. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Harrison Smith, who's going to be talking about underwater audio-visual stuff. Unfortunately, well, fortunately in lots of ways, it's Harrison's birthday today, so he's not here, but he has recorded a talk for us. So here we go. If you can't hear it, please, can you just tell me straight away?
Hello everyone, I'm Harrison Smith, the Environmental Specialist at Celtic Sea Power, and today I'm excited to share with you our Seal Spy work and the accompanying research we're doing on seal vocalizations. I do apologise for not being here today. It's actually my birthday, but I'm spending it plastering my new house. But anyway, I'm a marine biologist. I've been working for Celtic for 3 years, and a lot of my work effort is spent focusing on marine mammals and innovative monitoring solutions. And seals, as we all know, are particularly important for the UK. Grey seals, as you can see here, make up about a third of the global population. So what happens here has global relevance, and our goal today is
Sue, can you turn the volume up?
I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, but I will
There's got a
give it a go.
few messages in the chat to say it's too quiet.
Okay, thank you. That's really appreciate that. Okay, I've put it on full volume. We'll see how we go. Thank you very much, Gareth, for telling me, because I hadn't seen that in the chat. I might have to stop playing it from the start, I think. Again.
Hello, everyone.
Ooh.
I'm Harrison. And seals, as we all know, are particularly important for the UK. Grey seals, as you can see here, make up about a third of the global population.
That's
So
much better, Sue.
what happens
Much
here
better.
has global relevance, and our goal today is really to show our project why it's important to monitor seals non-invasively or as less invasively as possible, and hopefully so we can better understand their behaviour to support conservation and development decisions. So our project focuses on recording and analysing seal sounds and what they make underwater, and these are incredibly informative. They help us understand anything from social interactions to mating behaviour and stress responses in the environment. And by linking these calls to behaviours from footage, we can identify seals, potentially assess population dynamics, and look at pressures and all kinds of rich data for different marine management decisions. So this line of work first began when Sue approached us and asked us what kind of insights we could give on the potential for cameras to be mounted on floating offshore wind platforms, just as they've done with tidal energy devices. And really it was the steering away from cameras initially just slightly and looking into passive acoustic monitoring as well. And really from the get-go we wanted to see whether we could listen to seals underwater, automate that process like we've done with dolphins and porpoise around the world and whales. And then also combine footage with that to understand a bit more about them. So I had a master's student help us record seals at the seal sanctuary in Greek, and also using GoPros for footage. Her dissertation, classification of underwater vocalizations, and their link to behavior cues in captive grey seals, I think. She captured around 900 calls, classified them and linked them to behaviors on the GoPro at the same time. And only a fraction of these calls were classified from the time we spent there, because there's only so much one person could do manually. But anyway, we wanted to match this after a dissertation with recordings in the sea, in situ. So we had a spot on the north coast of Cornwall, near a haul-out site. We used hydrophones, and we also inherited a bottom-mounted camera from the Exeter University. And this really was the precursor to Seal Spy #1, which you'll see very soon. And then since then, lots of tagging. We've done lots of machine learning, AI work. But I won't be going into that today. If you want to learn more about the machine learning side of things, which is most of our work, but it gets very technical, please email me, or you can look on the YouTube for the Southwest Marine Ecosystem Seal Conference earlier this year. But anyway, here's our camera. This is the Seal Spy system, well, #1 at least, and it's a relatively compact underwater monitoring kit that gives us almost 360 degrees vision. After testing the bottom-mounted camera from before, which is not pictured here, we developed this midwater system for obvious reasons. One, because the camera got knocked over by a seal or a scuba diver, but we can see it's dark, neoprene maybe, but I'm unsure. Don't want to blame the seals. And also we want to have it adjustable and above the flora and seaweed, which can get quite high. So working with Falmouth University, they've massively overhauled the camera piece at the top of that system you can see there. It's actually there zoomed in. There's the camera, and we've taken it from 3 days battery life with the same batteries, that is, to between 14 and 18 days. So massively significant increase. And the next step really is to integrate the hydrophone within the system as well for various things. At the moment, the hydrophone's linked on the same line but above this. But really, we're doing this through our next funding project, and that's actually with Sue. Sue led on this, and this is Innovate UK funding for the new innovators in marine and maritime. Great South West Seal Spy Solutions is the project. But yeah, this kind of recognises the potential for this technology to transform marine mammal monitoring. The funding is really for the development and the commercialization of this, and to integrate 5G buoy, 5G capabilities for real-time, non-invasive detection, so we can hopefully transmit video footage live. And once we've integrated the hydrophones and we've integrated our classifier, whenever we hear seal vocalizations or seal noises above a certain confidence threshold, the system can warn us and send us kind of like live trigger alerts. That can maybe trigger a camera into a high definition mode or something to help battery. But that's kind of the goal. But yeah, that funding hopefully will allow us to do that, and it's going to kick off in the next week or so. Oh, and there's another design of the camera. So in that diagram, the camera piece is in the clear blue side at the top, and the battery's on the long canister, but it sits upright in the water column. Anyway, I promised to share a few lovely seal sounds and footage, and these are some I've just grabbed real quickly. Hopefully the background noise isn't too loud. It always is when you screen record and replay this, but let's give it a go. Another one. This has got one right at the start and right at the end. That one at the end was quite hard to hear, but anyway, here's some more pictures with bounding boxes over them. So these are some really nice long calls that for some reason I didn't choose the audio for. There's 2 more calls, and there's 3 right there. Oh, and here's our footage. Now hopefully this carries on playing because it's 8 minutes of footage. So it's 8 minutes of complete seal clips that we took from our most recent deployment for 2 weeks in Cornwall, and there were the behaviours listed at the bottom. We actually got 323 instances of seals from this. That's fantastic. And moving forward, our next goal is to really see how reliably we can photo ID individual seals. And Sue's already identified a couple, but we need to be able to balance camera quality with battery duration. And this actually depends heavily on environmental conditions. And interestingly, where we deployed in our first site is very dynamic. It's a very mixed water site, so that the clarity is never going to be as good as it is in other places. And for some reason, the camera auto-shifted green partway through the footage. There wasn't an algal bloom, it was nice and clear blue, but yeah. I'm not going to show all of this, but basically what makes this innovative is it's non-invasive or less invasive than tagging seals. There's a very high information ceiling, and it's been proven for cetaceans for passive acoustic monitoring. And if we can integrate this camera well with it, then we're going to find so many more things out about seals. So hopefully soon enough, Seal Spy will therefore allow users, developers, regulators alike, to assess potential environmental impacts in real time. We can ensure compliance with the legislation and to protect seals during construction and operation of offshore infrastructure like floating offshore wind. And this is especially important in the Celtic Sea, where we're hopefully seeing a lot of floating offshore wind projects soon. And real-time monitoring really helps us to understand and mitigate these impacts that could happen between the coexistence of this kind of wind turbine farms and systems. Currently, there are several projects going on in the UK with offshore wind, and they all require pre- and post-construction monitoring for seals, which is often done via tagging or vessel-based surveys. So our goal really here is to position ourselves as a scalable, non-invasive alternative that can be deployed across such projects in the future. This is our OIC-funded subsea soundscape project, or S3. Again, I've spoken about this before, and you can find lots online, but just to go over it real quick, we're deploying 21 stations that consist of several different types of hydrophones across the Celtic Sea. We're actually going to be deploying them at the end of this month, hopefully, touch wood. But yeah, this mainly focuses on cetacean monitoring, but we're also focusing on seal vocalization classifiers on this, looking at some vessel noise, and all of this is to compare against traditional EIA methods, showing gains in cost, time, and safety compared to other methods like digital aerial surveys for cetaceans, which aren't ideal. But what I wanted to show you here was, so there are our stations in green and red dots, and right in the middle of those dots, where the yellow dots are, I forget the yellow dots, but right in the middle of those project development areas, that's where floating offshore wind potentially could be. So right in the middle between south coast of Wales and north coast of Cornwall and Devon. And if we do this, this is Sue's research from 2018, but these points are where the same seal has been, or the same seals have been identified at multiple sites. And obviously, they don't all swim in straight lines, but there's a high potential from looking at this that they're going to be traveling through the PDAs, the project development areas. So all of this is really important, that we have the capability to listen to seals, monitor them, and to see them in real time. And we need to know this kind of baseline first before we can start thinking about mitigations. Oh, and one last thing. So we've been currently we've currently tagged 3,000 calls from about 50 hours of recordings. Now we've got about 1,000 hours of recordings. So really, for all our machine learning efforts, we need 10 to 20,000 calls. So that's a lot more. It's not too much more. So we've kind of set up this platform on Let's Talk Cornwall to get people who are interested to help us out. So on here is a little page description of what we're doing. It consists of a few training and instruction manuals. It's very simple. An example to see seal calls before it shows you the answers. And hopefully, if people are interested, especially students, they can contact me. They can look at how we do this as well on Raven Pro, which is Raven Lite, which is a free platform for listening to the files and then drawing boxes around them. And it's all quite simple, but if you're interested, please email me, and I can set you up and link you up on that, and it should go live next week. We're also going to be providing certificates, professional certificates, joint between Celtic Sea Power and the Cornwall Seal Research Trust, with levels as well based on how much you do. So yeah, again, great for students to adding to their experience, and even a few hours would really help us over the next few months. So yeah, come and help the seals and Celtic Sea Power. And also on this site, you're going to see two of our conference papers that we developed with Bath University a few months ago that were at the Underwater Acoustic Conference. They're both on machine learning and seal calls, so if you're interested in them, you can look at them on the site. And the full 8-minute clipped video of all our seal footages from our camera is going to be uploaded on there. Well, it is uploaded there, so you can see that next week. And then when we've also finished our second deployment at Falmouth, finished editing and clipping all the footage, that will be on there as well. So hopefully we have another 8 minutes of lovely footage. But anyway, I've gone over my time. I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for your attention today. I'm very sorry I couldn't be there in person. But anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions over email, and I'm sure Sue could help with a few if you have any right now. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the class.
Lovely. That's fantastic. Inspirational piece of work, going to transform marine mammal monitoring of seals for sure offshore, and it's much less invasive for sure, probably non-invasive, but much less invasive than the current strategy, which is satellite tags. Okay, I'm going to pass over to John Arnott, and he is going to give you a guided tour of a seal skull. So what I suggest you do during this is, if you go up to the top of your screen to the view bit, you will be able to make the speaker the main picture on your screen, so that you will be able to see large what John is up to. John, where are you?
Hello, Sue.
Okay, yes, I can see you now. So I'm just going to do that on my screen. All you will be able to see at the minute is something that looks like a blurry bit of white. There we go.
Right, there we are then. So I need to enlarge this myself. There we go. Right, I still can't quite see it. So what we're doing here is we've actually got a harbour seal. It's a can you hear me all right? Because the speaker is pointing away from me. This is good. This is a juvenile harbour seal. I've had it a few years now, and I did age it at, I can't remember, I think it was 2 years, but when it came to me, it was almost in bits. It was very loosely held together, and I had to super glue everything together, including all the teeth and the roots of the canine teeth. That's these sharp teeth at the front here. They've got ridges on the roots, and that does give a clue to the age of the animal, but they're super glued in now. Anyway, when you look at this skull, you can see it very clearly is a predator's skull. You can see these very sharp canine teeth, both in the top jaw and the bottom jaw, so that the lower jaw does come away. There are a couple of species of deer that you find in Britain which also have canines, but only in the upper jaw, and they're not used for holding on to prey. They're used in fights with other males. So it's the males in particular that have long canines. These are muntjac deer and Chinese water deer. So when you look at this skull, all the apart from these large eye teeth, all the other teeth behind these big canines here, they're all sharply pointed teeth, and they're used for holding on to prey. They're gripping, not chewing teeth. So again, if I'll just attach the lower jaw here, you can see how these teeth, just bring it a little bit closer to the camera, these teeth actually overlap. They don't overlap. They are alternating teeth. So they're not really designed for chewing. Now I've got another skull here, which belongs to a fallow deer, young female fallow deer. And if we look at these teeth, you can see that they're very, very flattened, and they're ideal for grinding vegetation. Again, the ones at the front, the canines, so the incisors are missing on the lower jaw, and deer don't have an upper jaw with teeth all the way to the end. A lot of the bone is missing here. They just have a horny pad there, but very much grinding teeth on this fallow deer skull. I also have here a fox skull. Now, this fox skull that's all I've got of it. Somebody gave it to me, and it's missing the lower jaw. So instead, I can show you a 3D printed fox skull, and I want you to look in particular really closely, if I can get you to see this, at these teeth just here, this area here, and I'm going to bring them in closer and manipulate the jaw. And I don't know whether you can see that they're overlapping. That tooth is overlapping the one on the lower jaw, creating a really superb biting, chewing surface, a slicing surface for slicing up meat. So they're called carnassial teeth, and they work a little bit like scissors. Now, as I've already pointed out, the harbour seal doesn't have that. So harbour seals prefer, if they can, if possible, to when they're feeding, to feed on small shoaling species of fish like sprats and sand eels, which they can literally suck down. I've got a paper on this which included some video taken in a laboratory situation, admittedly, but it really shows how both the true seals, and I think they had some sea lions there as well, actually, if they can, they will just go up. They don't need to grab hold of their prey. If it's small enough, they can just suck it in. Now, they will, of course, feed on larger species of fish, but they're more expensive energy-wise because they have to be ripped apart. Because the teeth aren't chewing teeth, they have to tear them apart using their claws, gripping onto the fish with their jaws, or they just bring the fish to the surface and throw it from side to side with their heads, breaking it up into smaller pieces, which they can actually swallow. Grey seals, by the way, their skulls are similar, but they have simple pointed post canine teeth. So those cheek teeth on the harbour seal, you can see they've just got 2 to 3 little pointy bits per tooth, whereas on a grey seal they just have simple conical pointy teeth, just like the canine teeth here on this skull, but they're smaller than obviously than the canine teeth. The other thing is, when I got this skull, I was looking at it and I was really impressed at how narrow this distance was here between the two eye orbits. And that's because seals have particularly large eyes. The eye of a harbour seal is about 40 millimeters across. So that's the size of a golf ball. And you'll see a golf ball fits in there quite nicely. Now, human eyes are about 24 millimeters across, and here's a human eye just for size comparison compared with a seal's eye. So the bigger eye allows the seal to see in dim light underwater. Ultimately, of course, if it gets too dark, they'll be using their whiskers to find their food. Now, the eyes are pretty forward directed in this skull. It's quite difficult to see that, but they can look forwards. I've put this eye back in here again. I've even got another eye, which makes it look really creepy. But that forward vision is typical of a predatory animal. If you look again at get rid of those eyes, bring in our fallow deer, you can see that the eyes are very much looking out sideways. They're not forward directed at all, because they're basically looking out for any wolves or lynx or other predators that may chase them. So they're very much side angled, and you can see that when I tip the skull like that. So with harbour seals, they've got good binocular vision. It's apparently around 67 degrees. It's not as good as a dog or a cat. So in the dog, it's a little bit wider, 70 to 80 degrees, depending on breed. And cats, it can be as wide as 100-degree vision looking forward, binocular vision looking forward. And that's because cats will use their forelimbs to help them catch and control their prey. So they need a wider field of view for that, whereas dogs hardly use their forelimbs at all. And seals, of course, cannot use their forelimbs. They're simply not big enough to allow them to catch food. The other thing is, and I thought this is quite interesting, with the fox skull, this is a genuine fox skull. If we look at it on top, can you just see this little triangular bony bit just here on each side? Now that is apparently there to help support the eye when the animal is chewing, and it don't want the eye to be moved all over the place. And in the fallow deer, that process, because deer eat hard vegetation, that process actually forms a complete arch. You can just about make it out here behind the eye. So it's no longer just a triangle, complete arch. What does the seal have? Moving all the props around. If you look closely, you'll see the seal does not have that little process, that post-orbital process sticking out behind the eye. And that's because, as I've already said, seals don't chew. Neither do walruses. And in fact, what's interesting, I haven't got the skull of any of the eared seals, but fur seals and sea lions do have that process. And I've been trying to find out why. And what I found was that these eared seals have long muscular necks, which they move around a lot. And when they're walking and swimming, they're using their forelimbs much more than a true seal does. And so their neck is swaying from side to side. And it may be that process behind the eye is helping just to stabilize the eye in the skull. However, I'm just going to give you a little warning that came up on Google under AI. I couldn't find any substantiated reference to it in the various sources that were listed under the AI. So there you are. Now, if you look at the fox skull again, I'm just going to point out a tiny little hole. Let's see if I can do it this way.
1 minute, John.
How much?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Look at this little hole here. I don't know whether you can just about make that out. Tiny little hole. That's a tear duct, and that takes the tears away from the eye and into the nasal cavity where where the fox is able to get rid of them. We look at a seal skull. It's a bigger skull, so it's easier to see. There is absolutely no sign of that little hole there. And that's because when seals and any other aquatic mammals are underwater, they don't want to fill up their nostrils with tears. So what it means is that when they come up to the surface, seals have to get rid of the tears just by letting them overflow out of the eye orbit. And of course, that's why seals have that teary sort of appearance, and they look as though they're crying. How am I doing? Just one more feature perhaps we could point out. I'm going to use this straw here and just poke it through the skull there. Seals have really, really sensitive whiskers. They're used to help them find their food. And this hole here takes the veins and the arteries, lots of blood vessels, and the nerves through to the moustachial pad, which is in this area here, can actually contain somewhere between 40 and 46 whiskers on each side. And those whiskers are really, really sensitive. Each one has 10 times more nerve endings than an equivalent sized terrestrial carnivore. And it's been, they reckon it's around about the number of sort of nerve endings per whisker is around about 1,500. So that's an awful lot of sensitivity multiplied by 40 to 46 whiskers. The fox, by the way, has hardly any room for all these little veins, and it's really difficult to see in there, but the hole is actually right down there, and it's a much smaller diameter hole. I know the skull is smaller, but in proportion to the skull itself. Well, that's probably all I've got time for in 10 minutes. So is that all right, Sue?
It's fantastic. Thank you very much. Round of applause for John. Thank you very much. I will start sharing my screen again, and we have James Barnett coming up next. There we go. Let me just drag this across the screen. So James Barnett is from the Cornwall Marine Pathology team, and he represents as well as works with the Cetacean Stranding Investigation Programme. Over to you, James.
Thanks very much, Sue. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully you can. Sue's going to advance my slides as well, because I'm a total Luddite when it comes to anything IT. So I just want to tell you a little bit about mycoplasmas and seals. There's various things that we're investigating all the time as we're doing our post-mortem examinations down here in Cornwall, turning up new things which help to increase our knowledge about the diseases these animals suffer from. But mycoplasmas are very small bacteria that don't actually have a cell wall. They belong to the class molecules, which are the smallest self-replicating organisms known to man. And there are a wide variety of different species, many of which are pathogens in humans and also in a wide range of animals, both domestic and wild, and that includes seals. Next slide, please, Sue.
Oh, sorry, John, you can jump forward.
So the history of mycoplasmas and seals goes back quite a while, and hopefully you'll understand why I'm rabbiting on about them a bit later because of the new findings that we've had. But essentially, 30 years ago, in some samples that were taken from the respiratory tracts of harbour seals in an influenza outbreak in New England back in the late 70s, early 80s, some retrospective mycoplasma testing was done, and mycoplasma testing is extremely specific in its nature. It's not done by general culture, but they managed to turn up a novel species of mycoplasma, the first one recorded in seals, and this was aptly named Mycoplasma foetida. And it was written up in the International Journal of Systematic Bacteriology back in 1992. And then rapidly followed by, in the next slide, Sue, two more species of Mycoplasma. And these were again Mycoplasma species that were found in the respiratory tracts and a number of other sites of samples taken retrospectively again from the first December outbreak, which you're aware of, in the North and Baltic Seas back in 1988. So two more species, Phocarinis and Foetida cerebrale. At the time, it was not really known just how significant these organisms were, whether they were causing disease in their own right, because they were obviously found in samples taken from animals that were suffering from a viral disease. But there may have been significant opportunist pathogens coming in after the virus. Next slide, please, Sue. And then zooming fast forward to the 21st century and closer to home down here in Cornwall, A Mycoplasma cerebrale isolate was obtained from a grey seal pup that was rehabilitated in the Cornish Seal Sanctuary, and it was taken from it was found in an infected swollen eye flipper, one of those characteristic things you find in quite a few seal pups, unfortunately, after bite wounds, and also a few broken bones. And these three species were the first three species known about in grey and common seals, and they were written up in a review article by the APHA Mycoplasma team, of which Nick Davison, some of you will know that name, I've ringed him in the reference at the bottom, who I worked with very closely down here in Cornwall when we were both working for the government lab just outside Truro. He did an awful lot of this work. He's a very good bacteriologist and managed to isolate these different organisms. He's now the Strains coordinator for Scotland. So next slide, please, Sue. So this is an excerpt from the paper. Sorry, you probably can't see this very clearly, but it's just to give you an idea about the sheer number of different sites that these Mycoplasma species are now being isolated from, different infected sites, particularly foci cerebrale. And you'll also see from the foci cerebrale list that there are very few other organisms that were isolated from those different sites, suggesting that foci cerebrale is actually quite significant in terms of its pathogenic potential. And then in addition, you'll also see that there is a large number of unidentified Mycoplasma species at the time of this review article, because they hadn't been fully speciated, sequenced at that time. And also the last thing to look at is that the number of A's in that central column of seal location, those are all the ones that were worked up by Nick and his team down here in Cornwall, primarily from grey seals. So, and a substantial contribution to this piece of work. And then the next slide, please, Sue. So when Nick and I went our separate ways, he went up to Scotland and I left the APHA when they closed the local government lab down here. We started PMing at the University of Exeter and then now have our own facility outside Hobson. I've got to be honest, we rather neglected mycoplasmas, mainly because we didn't have ready access anymore to the APHA facilities and the specific testing that needs to be carried out for mycoplasma species. And it wasn't until 2024 when I was looking at a seal pup with a vet actually from Exeter, Rob Summerwill. He suggested, well, have you thought about mycoplasma? I thought, good grief, no, we haven't thought about mycoplasma for an awful long period of time, and we probably should be in these circumstances. So his suggestion, coupled with Sam Holland, who is the joint lead of the Diseases of Wildlife expert group in the APHA, who made funding available for us to carry out some mycoplasma testing, and we're able to kickstart the whole thing again. I'm so glad we did, because we found something very new. So next slide, please. Next slide, Sue. So thanks. Sorry, I'm afraid the top of this slide has been cut off. I can't quite read it either. But this pup essentially was the first case where Rob said, should we be thinking about mycoplasma? And we had this pup from Boscastle, which was unable to move on 3 of its hind flippers. Couldn't move 3 of its flippers, sorry. 1 hind, 2 fore, not obviously 3 hind flippers. And it had an infected hock joint associated with a puncture wound, and then these 2 infected shoulder joints, which are quite unusual because there was no evidence of tracking infection. They were purely isolated in the shoulder joints, which were very prevalent, lots of putty fluid present in those joints. So this is the first case. And then moving on to the next case, this pup is obviously euthanized because it couldn't move essentially, which is very sad. The next case was this collapsed moribund pup that came in November 2024. The first one is in September. It's just parent paw. Again, I can't see the top of the slide. And this pup had badly infected ear and also multiple infected wounds and nasty ulcers in its mouth. And it became collapsed and moribund a day after it went into rehabilitation, had to be euthanized. And on PM, we found this nasty tracking pus infection all the way from its external ear canal right the way into its middle ear. And it also had an infected lanto-occipital joint, which is the last joint, the first joint between the head and the cervical spine. So it's that joint right at the top of your neck, was also infected. So that's the second case. And then we've got a third case, which wasn't in my talk on the Southwest Marine Ecosystem talk. This is a pup from Tresco in the Isles of Scilly, which unfortunately died in transit to British divers. Suffered an awful lot of hemorrhage around his head and neck, so unfortunately the journey obviously didn't go very well. Pup was dead on arrival, also had lungworm, but particularly had these very large infected retropharyngeal lymph nodes. These lymph nodes found in the angle of your jaw, and they were much, much larger than usual. So next slide, please, see. So we took samples from all 3 of these animals for Mycoplasma testing. So pooled shoulder capsules from the Boscastle pup, middle ear sample from the Perranporth pup, and then pooled retropharyngeal lymph nodes, and also a lung sample from the Tresco pup. And all three of them came up with a totally novel Mycoplasma species called Mycoplasma phosimorsus. And in addition, the middle ear sample from the Perranporth pup, which wasn't the one I talked about in my last talk, also had a second species called Mycoplasma cerebrale, which I've already mentioned. So that's a totally novel Mycoplasma species. So next slide, please, Sue. So how significant is this isolate, this species likely to be? Well, it's unclear in the Boscastle pup because we also had a very common pathogen present in the shoulder joints, isolated from the shoulder joints called Streptococcus foci, and there were Coccibacteria found on histopathology consistent with Strep foci that were probably the most important pathogen in that particular case. Unclear in the Perranporth pup because we had two Mycoplasma species present, one of which was already known to be a significant pathogen from previous work. And then the Tresco pup, though, the histopathology of the inflammation in the lung and in the retropharyngeal lymph nodes was very similar, and the histopathologist is fairly convinced that phosimorsus probably was the cause. So next slide, please. So Mycoplasma phosimorsus has been isolated elsewhere, particularly in people, and it appears to be a zoonosis because it was isolated from a bunch of people who were in contact with seals in Scandinavia and developed seal finger or septic arthritis after contact with seals. So even though it hadn't been isolated from seals at that point, people were fairly convinced, the scientists were fairly convinced that it was likely to be a zoonosis from seals to people that was causing it. But it wasn't until we had our 3 isolates at the end of last year that we finally illustrated the fact that this species of Mycoplasma was found in seals. So it's a novel finding that we're in the process of writing out. That's it from me, just to say thanks to everybody as always for the help, the Seal Research Trust, but of course the Cornwall Marine Pathology team, guys from the Strandings Network and British Divers who help us so much with our work, Rob for his suggestion, Anne and Hilary, and Miriam and Dan at the APHA, Gail who carried out histopathology, the APHA and Starcross for all their initial bacteriology and sample processing, and of course Sam for making the funding available. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, James. That was extremely informative. I'm sure there will be some questions. Please put your questions in the chat and James will be able to look at them and respond. Over to you, Em, from British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who's going to give us an update about the Common Seal Mouth Rot project.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. If it does start to have some issues, I can turn my camera off.
You're doing fine.
Thank you. So I'm Mayman. I work at British Divers Marine Life Rescue. I'm part of the Common Seal Mouth Rot project. So today we're giving you a very, very brief summary on the project so far. I do, of course, work with Jamie, Devon, Natalie, and of course many other people as well who are listed here and also extras. But again, we can go into further details on our website, if that's okay. Next slide, please, Sue. So the condition we generally see in weaned common seal pups, not in greys, but the clinical signs range from swollen muzzles to wounds around the face that may be potentially infected, and also hard palate ulcerations where they may potentially have exposed bone, necrosis, or a nasal fistula formation, and large areas of tissue erosion. However, across the board, we are, of course, seeing compromised welfare. I'm afraid there will be some gory images in here as well. Next slide, please, Sue. In the last couple of years, there has been a noticeable rise in the number of pups presenting with the facial lesions being reported to us, with some cases being so badly compromised where they have had to be euthanized by a vet. There wasn't really much understanding as to the pathology as to what is going on, so a collaborative investigation group was launched to determine the definitive cause of the condition, factors around its increase, effects on the population, and what can be done to manage the condition as well. Next slide, please, Sue.
Sorry.
It's okay. In 2020, we took a small number of tissue samples from euthanized pups for analysis. There were only 4 pups at the time, and the results of this is what then prompted us to develop our robust sampling protocol to be developed. From 2021 onwards, we've had an enormous effort from veterinary practices, rehabilitation centres, pathologists, as well as, of course, BDMLR medics who do go out and are attending these pups right across the country. The plan has been to identify the pups with mouth rot signs, complete the paperwork which details when and where they were rescued, and of course their clinical condition, as well as obtaining photographs to assist with the grading of the severity of the condition, which I'll go into a little bit later. If they are euthanized or they do die during rescue, then tissue samples are taken for metagenomic analysis and histopathology, and we are working to identify if there is a viral or a bacterial component to this condition. Next slide, please, Sue. Very briefly, the table shows the number of call-outs to common seals that BDMLR have received over the last couple of years, which this includes healthy seals, where there's just been a concern for how they've been on a beach, seals that have been chased back into the sea, seals that have not been found, etc. So it's the whole scope. The second category is the calls where we have attended and these animals have actually been physically assessed. And out of those, how many have been suspect mouth rot cases, which is approximately 30 to 40% of examined seals had a degree of mouth rot, and approximately 40 to 50% of those having a more severe disease presentation. For example, 2024, in total, we had 540 calls to seals. We got hands-on with 261 of those, and of those, 101 of those animals were suspect mouth rot cases. Next slide, please. The results so far suggest peak cases in August with an increasing shift into September, which we're starting to see every single year. I appreciate that the graphs are quite difficult to read a little bit if it's the first time you've seen them. Most of the cases are reported in the east coast of England, with Norfolk seen as the absolute busiest, with Northumberland, Suffolk and Yorkshire seeing high numbers as well, though we do get cases in Scotland, Ireland and the southwest of England, which again seems to be having a general shift in numbers, and we're starting to see more of them as well. Next slide, please. Between 2021 and 2024, admissions to rehab ranged from 27% to 48% of rescue cases, and rehab admissions peaked in 2023, but the release rates improved in 2024 to 46%. Could you click it again, please, Sue? I think there's another one, if that's okay. Just click a couple and it'll probably pop up. That's it, and keep going. That's it. Mortality in rehab is also an interesting factor, as 7 of the euthanized pups in 2024 in rehab were graded at a very low 1 or 2 on our severity scale. It could potentially be quite interesting to look into their cases throughout the rehab process. For example, did the mouth rot condition get worse for them in rehab, or was the cause of death potentially another ailment? So again, this is more information we can go into on our website, and again, if anybody does have questions, but there's a lot of information I do appreciate here. Next slide, please. So this is a little example of our severity scale. So it's a very basic example of gradings, which start at 0, which is the visually unaffected, to number 4, which is the most significant with bone exposure. And quite a few of our medics, unfortunately, have seen these cases. We believe the virus triggers the pathology, which has then been supported by when we've seen the viral presence in specimens, which the actual seal visually didn't have any external symptoms, but we have seen the viral load present in the sample. We believe that this results in the damage to the mouth, where we potentially see the secondary bacterial infection, which then has the potential to also lead to sepsis as well. Next slide, please. This is just a small list of the bacteria and viruses that we have come across to date based on the animals that we have a full catalogue of information put together from their samples. Moving forwards, we do want to highlight that we require the forms with photographs, which helps us do the grading, which then gives us an idea as to what we're seeing in the bacteriology and virology side of things. We also do specifically look for formalin and ethanol samples as well. In some cases, we may just potentially be sent e-swabs, which we just do not get the same data from. So we always stress it's always formalin and ethanol samples that we are always after. Next slide, please. This slide shows the geographic spread of the disease in the samples and how many of the total genomic details we have on them, which includes both the transcriptomics to get the RNA viruses from the data set, as well as DNA metagenomic data, which tells us about the host, as well as any DNA-based organisms such as bacteria and DNA viruses. We have over 140 more samples awaiting sequencing. These findings also highlight both the regional variation and the ongoing scale of work that is still needed within our project. For example, herpes virus was found in 63% of Norfolk samples and with 71% of the Yorkshire samples. The greater the funding we can secure, the more samples, of course, we are able to process in the data set, and of course, the sooner as well. Next slide, please. Just to recap, the key findings show the mouth rot is seen in weaned common pups or harbour seals, with Norfolk identified as the busiest region for cases. Around 30 to 40% of common pup call-outs that we receive involve mouth rot to some extent, with 40 to 50% of those affected pups show some degree of bone exposure to the hard palate of the mouth. While pups in the earlier stages of the disease can and do recover well and they can go on to be released, severe cases with bone exposure do typically often require euthanasia. Next slide, please. For the future of the project, we continue with our yearly sampling to track any changes to timings, especially with the shift towards September that we have mentioned. Work will also focus on better defining the pathology using the severity scale that we have developed, histology and other molecular tools. Clinically unaffected but euthanized seal samples will continue to be studied as comparators to the technical diseased samples as well. And new beachside diagnostics are currently being developed to allow a quicker assessment in the field, which in time, we hope that medics and rehabilitation centres and vet practices may potentially be able to use themselves. Advanced molecular analysis will be applied to deepen the understanding of the disease process as well. Our little seal diagrams at the bottom just are an illustration on how the disease progresses through the different stages as well. And on to the last slide, if we may. So as always, we just want to say a massive thank you and a well done to everybody who has been involved in the research. There's an awful lot of people who have gone into the making of the data that we have so far and have made the project what it has become. That includes the rehabilitation centres, the vet practices, the pathologists, and everybody who has contributed to the rescue, the research and the sampling efforts as well. So we just want to say a massive thank you and well done for all the effort that everyone has done so far to date. And thank you for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much. That was fantastic, Em. I'm sure that will generate lots of questions as well. And you were bang on time too, because you were 10 minutes. Well done. Fantastic. Over to Jenny, who is going to give us an update from Friends of Horsey Seals about the Flying Rings campaign that Seal Alliance have been pushing and leading on in 2025.
Well, thanks, Sue. Can you hear me, everyone?
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Jenny Hobson and I'm a member of Friends of Horsey Seals. I started the Flying Ring campaign 6 years ago now with the support of Friends of Horsey Seals. And this is an update about what we've been doing in 2025. Can we have the next slide, please, Gareth? So this year, as Sue said, Seal Alliance has given full support to the campaign, and we have rebranded the campaign this year with this lovely new national logo. And the reason for this, we had advice as to what the campaign needed to take it national so it would be recognised across the country. I think a lot of you here will know about the Flying Rings campaign, but there may be a few who don't. So I'll sort of explain that as we go along. As part of rebranding, we had the national logo and posters, and we made up a really comprehensive resources file. And this is some of the things that are in that file to give guidance to people who were interested in helping with the campaign. We have the next slide, please. As well as being a member of Friends of Aussie Seals and now Seal Alliance, I'm also a long-standing volunteer for the RSPCA at East Winch Wildlife Centre, and it's there that I gained my link with seals, and I saw the first seals that were brought in, rescued by Friends of Aussie Seals, who were caught in flying rings. And the seal that you can see with the pink ring in the centre on the right-hand side, that's Pinkerfoe. And it was seeing Pinkerfoe when she was brought in that just rocked my heart and felt I had to do something to try and stop this happening to other seals. So this is a slide of a short presentation that is part of the resources pack that explains how seals can get caught in flying rings that have been lost or discarded, easily lost and then taken away by the tide and the wind into the sea. Young seals particularly, but also adult seals, find these flying rings, and being curious, highly intelligent animals, as we've heard, explore them, sometimes putting their heads through the middle. And as the seal grows and the water pressure pushes, the ring gets lodged deeper and deeper, causing the really most horrendous open wounds. And sadly, the seals will eventually die from starvation and from infection of the open wounds. And it's just a very few that we've managed to rescue, and that BDMLR have also managed to rescue. Have the next slide, please. So one of the big things that we've been doing, particularly over the last few years, is to contact councils, and we've had a lot of success in getting councillors to be aware of what's happening to seals, because it's the councils that can take action, and we have support from all these councils now. And what they've generally done is to put a voluntary ban on the use of flying rings on their beaches and the sale of flying rings in shops in their area. They can't legally stop the sale of flying rings. That has to be done by legislation, but a lot of encouragement has been given. And we're also targeting or asking people to talk to councils inland as well as coastal, because flying rings are being sold all over the country and people typically bring them to play with on the beach. Next slide, please. So one of the aims of the campaign is to contact the whole community, raising awareness through putting out social media posts. The seal wardens in Norfolk, and I'm really pleased to see that some of you are here listening to these talks this evening. The seal wardens in Norfolk this summer have been operating again a swap scheme, talking to people on the beach, and if they're playing with flying rings, offering them the alternative of a seal-safe solid disc. And it's also an opportunity to talk to people generally about seals and safe human-seal interaction. For example, enjoying seals from a very good distance. And I have to put up the £15,000, which you may or may not guess what it is. This was Gareth's brainwave to get people talking. How could the cost of this flying ring be £15,000 when you see them for £1 or £1.50? That is the cost between up to £15,000 to rescue, treat, and rehabilitate an adult seal who would be in care typically up to about three months. Okay, next slide, please. We've had good success with shops, and when I say we, the team at Seal Alliance is very small, with myself, Gareth, John, and Alex and Lloyd, who've been giving support and expert sort of advice. A lot of people across the country in seal groups, volunteers in all sorts of different groups, individuals have been supporting the campaign and writing to people, sending emails. And this year, of the national retailers, Halfords, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, and the Works started to stop selling flying rings last year. They've all come on board and are supporting the campaign by stopping selling flying rings. And a number of smaller shops have done so too. Next slide, please. The campaign has attracted excellent media coverage from the start, and this includes this year where we had all this coverage, and this is just a tiny example of the coverage. So we have had positive coverage on TV and through websites and through the press as well. Next slide, please. And the coverage started back in May on the platform of the petition that Gareth actually launched on behalf of Seal Alliance to stop the imports and sale of flying rings. And we went for change.org because it seemed to be a better platform. It doesn't have a short life as the government petitions do. And we got an amazing number, around 30,000 signatures came in the first couple of months. And that's rising, but it has slowed. So we are looking for support in getting this QR code out for people to sign the petition. Our aim is to get to 50,000, then hopefully 100,000, because it's only then that the campaign will be sort of taken seriously and have a voice in swaying government. So I think that's the last. Is that the last slide, Gareth?
It is the last slide.
It is the last slide. So I think Gareth's going to just add anything from that, and I think Sue has something to show as well. But just to say that this is very much a DIY campaign. We have put a lot of work in our little team in providing the resources pack, which is available through sealalliance.org. And we're just encouraging everyone to be aware and to say that you can help with the campaign by talking to people, shops if you feel minded to, and by sending an email to your local councillor. And I'll hand over to Gareth and Sue to finish off. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. How much time have I got left there, Sue?
Oh, actually, that's 10 minutes, but I don't mind if you want to just say something.
Yeah, no, I just want to reinforce what Jenny was saying, actually, is the fact that, from the very start, we want to sort of empower people to be very much part of this sort of campaign as well. And, I'm pleased to say that so many people have as well. So please have a look at the Seal Alliance website. All the resources are there for you. Please write to your local councillor. We can't write to your local councillor because they will not communicate back with us. It's the same as an MP as well. So, there are a number of people, in fact, there are a number of people on this particular meeting tonight that have done so. And I just want to point out one thing. I've just got another council yesterday that voted unanimously here in South Wales. That's the Neath and Port Talbot Council. And that came about from me having one conversation with one councillor, and then that was it. I gave the resources, and Rob, the councillor, went and did all the rest as well. So, we are slowly making our way across the country, but we need your help. We really do. We need you to look at the Seal Alliance website, look at the resources, use those resources. Jenny, myself, and Sue are all contactable. Our details are there. Please get in touch with us if you want any help as well. But I know that there are people out there that Sue's going to talk about now who really want to help us, especially with this book. Over to you, Sue.
Yeah, and I was going to say you haven't used my favourite phrase for the campaign, which is that it's a do-it-yourself campaign. So it's down to all of us to do it. And then what arrived at our office late last night, ridiculously late actually, was this book. So we now have 1,000 copies of this fantastic, beautifully illustrated book, Sammy and the Flying Ring. I've just got 2 illustrative pages within it to show that Sammy got caught in a flying ring and his mate Sully raised the alarm and managed to get him rescued. But you'll have to buy the book in order to find out the rest of the story. The book is here and it's just really beautiful. It's fabulous. You can click on that QR code and it will take you straight to a place where you can buy it. So please do consider, if you've got a youngster in your family, do you know what? I loved reading it because it's a rhyming story. If you've got a child in your family, then it's a complete no-brainer, particularly for Christmas. It's a bit early to be mentioning Christmas, but hey ho. Okay, thank you very much and well done for achieving so much in such a short space of time. So on to my input then. I thought we've had some gruesome stuff, so we probably needed to finish with something that was more uplifting and positive about seals. This is a beautiful, very fat chonk pup feeding from its mother, and I'm going to go through a series of behaviours. But when I started prepping this talk, I realised I couldn't do justice to this topic in 10 minutes. So I prepped a long talk, which will take place on the 4th of November. It's another one to just jot down for you. Take place on the 4th of November, which is a Tuesday. And again, if you want to get the link to that one, you can just email us using the same email address as you did this time. It will contain a lot of video clips. I always have to thank our funders, and I like thanking them because without them we wouldn't exist. And just to say to you that the information that's provided for the rest of this input has been collected by our survey volunteers who do 12 surveys every day. I also want to reiterate that whilst the photos look like that we were taking them close up, this is how far away we are when we're taking the photos. So we're following best practice, but we just use a big zoom lens to zoom in. And then once we've zoomed in, we realise that this is an entangled juvenile. But we do put stickers on our photos because it looks like we're stood over that entangled juvenile, and we're not. We're stood up on that high cliff top. So in terms of pupping, pupping has got on the right hand side a lot earlier than it used to be in Cornwall. We used to have most pups born in October followed by November, and since 2022 we've had most pups born in September followed by August. And in 2024, 54 pups were born in August compared to October. It was a really high year, and 2025 has been no exception. We had a really early start to the season this year. We had the second pup of the season, this one here without a mother. It's heartbreaking to watch, devastating, awful to watch that pup calling for its mother and requesting assistance when you can't do it. It's just awful. So this was the first mum at the proper start of the season on the 13th of August. And she had a pup a whole month earlier than her 2017 pup. She's had 8 pups in 9 years, and she is pupping 3 days earlier each year. In the full presentation, you will actually see the well, it won't be the real time, but you will get a link to the real-time feed of that the second feed that Thistle ever had with her mum, which is beautiful. Scream is a fantastic mum. So pup development, again, it will all be in the full presentation. We've got incredible photos taken this year, not the last year's one, which were incredible, but I showed last year, of pup development. We've had a pup being born again, and it's just shown incredible structures in the reproductive system of females. Of course, I did say I was going to be positive, but I found this really interesting because you can actually see in a premature pup how substantial the umbilicus is. And if a pup is full term, by the time it's born, the umbilicus snaps as it comes out. That wouldn't have done. So if you ever wanted a behaviour ethogram, it's called, which is a list of behaviours for pups and mums, this is it. So this is a pup who's tired and yawning. You can see why we all have to respect pups, because it has a big set of teeth, even though it's very young. And this is a fantastic, beautiful fat chonk. I'm just going to give you lots of lovely photos, really. A beautiful fat chonk resting on some seaweed, so it's asleep and resting. This one's alert and looking up. You can see the water edge on the right hand side. And this one is active. It's active, rubbing its head, doing a classic yawn, stretch, rub head, yawn, stretch, rub head, and really beautiful. Thistle, this is her moving to the haul out, to haul up the beach on day 1. So actually, again, when you see the video, you see how whilst they have relatively little muscles early on, they can still move quite strongly. This is Thistle exploring her new environment. So she's just, seeing what a stone tastes like. But what I love about this photo is the fact that she's got the tail between the legs. Super cute. And you can see the umbilicus as well. This one shows telltale signs that the pup is in trouble. So you can see the umbilicus in this one, but you can also see a pink band here and a pink bit under the chin. This means that the pup has been hauling all over the beach looking for its mother and worn a sore patch on its flippers, and also it's been suckling everything and worn a sore patch on its chin. And the bottom right photo shows just how bad those sore patches can get when pups are absolutely desperate for food. This one's got 2 pups interacting, which is quite unusual behaviour. And this one is a seal in a rock pool. They start rock pooling usually before they go out feeding. And this one is no exception, but it's chosen a fairly big swell to do it in. The video of this is phenomenal, but you can see from the wake, you can see how fast that pup is swimming. And it was swimming into shore. And what happened in the end of the video was that mum was following it, but it was just like a motoring up to shore, even though it's a white coat pup and not that strong yet. Okay, on to mum behaviours then. So here we've got a mum. She's actually worried. I don't know if you can tell that from the expression on her face, but she is worrying. So she was moving fast to the safety of the sea. She'd actually been worried by something away from her, probably a human, and she was racing towards the sea at speed. Here's another classic worried behaviour. So we've got a mum stretching up. We call it periscoping. She can't find her pup on these boulders on the beach. So she is stretching upwards to try and have a really good look to see if she can spot where her pup is. But for a seal, it isn't just about eyesight. She will be smelling repeatedly to try and get the scent of that pup. And that will give her an idea of where it is. Beautiful. This mum had her pup. But she was sleeping in the shallows and just chilling out, which is why when we're anywhere near a pupping site, we don't want to go anywhere close in the water, because all we'll do is disturb the mothers in the place where they get a little bit of respite away from their pups. Here's 2 mums doing low threat behaviour. They may or may not be calling, but often they are, and the call is usually woo, with a lot of flippering going on. And this is one mum telling the other mum to go away, you're getting too close to my pup. This is a mum with high threat behaviour. So this is a mum actually telling the beach master to get lost. It's Scream again, and she is coming into season fairly soon. So he's just going to keep checking her out to find out when she is ready for him to mate with her. This is another high threat as well. The video for this is really quite incredible. I'm so sorry I haven't got time to show you them tonight. It seems a bit mean, but it is what it is. You can see the pup on the left. You can see the mum that's for that pup on the left. You can probably see at top right there is a pup as well that's much younger, and that is the pup of the melanistic type mum at the bottom of the photo. So this melanistic mum is a young mum, and she doesn't know any better than to tell the old experienced mum off for coming up the beach towards her pup. So she had a really good snap at the mum and a snarl and a howl at the mum, trying to get the experienced mum to go away. And the experienced mum went, "What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous, woman," and just held her ground and started snapping back. At which point the melanistic type mum started rolling submissively away. So that's what non-aggressive behavior looks like. The submissive behavior is the roll away, and it's a behavior you frequently see with beach masters. So this is a mum. She was moving extremely fast and swimming to the shore as her pup was moving seaward. So she'd been keeping a lookout from the sea. She realised her pup was heading seaward, so she headed back to shore at a rate of knots to go and keep it away from the sea. This is a mum alert and watching her pup on the shore. So she's in the water, but she's watching her pup on the shore. And this mum was hauling up over the beach, and which had piles of seaweed on it, watching her, you know, so kind of sinking into the seaweed and struggling to move over that seaweed in order to get to her pup. Right, mum and pup behaviours. So this is actually a meconium birth, which might be interesting to you. This is a pup who's pooed in the amniotic sac, but nevertheless has survived and is thriving. There is a mum in the top right. Again, this is Scream. Mum in the top right looking at a pup and alert from the shore. So this is why we always have to look at the water to check if a pup is really on its own or whether the mum is there. And again, there's some fantastic videos. I will put the presentation so that you can see this on YouTube as well, or accessible on YouTube, so you can click these as live links to find out. Two mum and pup resting together, beautiful behaviour. And mum and pup touching noses, doing a scent bond. So this is how they get to recognise each other, as well as Maite said, through vocalisations. Beautiful cuddles, very evocative to watch and really beautiful. A mum flippering a pup, trying to encourage her pup to have a feed. Mum presenting, so she's rolling over for her pup to come and find the teats and feed. And then, yay, pup's found the teats and is feeding. And another mum. So we've got a fairly fat mum, although admittedly with a fat pup as well. And then we've got a much skinnier mum with a fat pup as well. This was extraordinary behaviour. I've never seen this before. This is taken this year. And this is a pup actually, because it was getting in the waves, it was trying to climb on its mum to get out of the waves. She didn't let it. This is a mum interacting with a second pup while she's feeding a first pup. And this is mum telling another pup to get lost. And it often looks quite aggressive, but when we've rescued pups that look like they've had an aggressive encounter with the adults, sometimes they've been really gentle. So we've even seen a pup with its head inside an adult male's mouth, and when the pup was rescued, it didn't have a single puncture wound. Moving together, following each other down to the shore, because mum will take the pup for swimming lessons on our type of coast. You'll get piggyback times while they're swimming in the water, and then swimming lessons, which is just wonderful. Okay, so Rob Wells's book that we have shows 9 challenges that a seal pup can face in its first year of life, and it has a happy ending, which is great. As I said, I will deliver a long version of this talk on the 4th of November, and yeah, for future reference, just so that you know, this presentation will be put on our YouTube channel. The QR code to the YouTube channel is up at the top if you've got your phone to hand, and you will be able to tell others about the talk. Please tell others about this Seal Alliance Masterclass so that other people can learn from these fantastic experts who've spoken tonight. I can't thank them enough. They've all been wonderful, and I just find them totally inspiring and with fascinating information. So I'm sure you want to give them a bit of a round of applause. You can do a reaction, or you can just do the hands, whatever. But thank you very much to everyone who's spoken tonight. And that's it. So I can stop sharing. Surprisingly, we have finished at the time 10 minutes later than we'd hoped to, but nevertheless, that's still pretty impressive. And there are lots of questions and comments in the chat. If we're going to say goodnight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop recording, because that seems a sensible thing to